They're gonna get married.
Fruit.
What does that mean?
Call up, being called up to the Torah.
Aye.
All right. I'm sorry, the internet issues here are a little crazy making, and I don't know what it is. It is what it is. Okay. This week's Torah portion is Parshat Vayeshev, which is you want to mute yourself, Sue? Need a pen? There's a pen. You can keep it. It's a JLE pen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Vayeshev is found in chapter 37, verse 1 through chapter 40, verse 23 in the book of Bereshit, Genesis. It page 198 through 221 in the Stone Edition of the Arsenal Chumash. Let me see if I have a Parsha handout. I think I do. I should.
Here's the facts. Thank you so much.
It was put up Friday, so. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about good and evil. Good and evil is not always so clear. We're going to also talk about the Torah is real. It gives us real life situations. It's not just rosy, beautiful, everything's happy. Real people. And we're going to find out that great people can make some mistakes. Maybe not exactly the way it may look like a mistake to us, but it may not be that mistake. It could be a different kind of mistake. We're going to go through people having tests of their character and morality. And we're going to talk about a very important idea called midah keneged midah, which means measure for measure. Which means that sometimes we do something and the Almighty pays us back based upon what we did. And that could be in a positive way, and God forbid, that could be in a negative way. So we're going to have to see that. And the term I like to use is God is the ultimate CPA. And I don't mean certified public accountant, I mean celestial payback accountant. All right. So we're going to see about that as well. So let's go through a little bit about the Parsha. The Parsha begins with the end of last week's Parsha listed all of the descendants of Esav, which we're really not that interested in. And now we're going to talk about Yaakov and his descendants and some of the issues that they faced. And the example that Rashi gives is when you're looking for a diamond in the sand, you sift through the sand. When you find a diamond, you just take the sand and you got the diamond. So Esav's children, fortunately, didn't turn out to be much. and unfortunately he ended up in the future making trouble for the Jewish people as well. We have Amalek, that's a descendant among others. But be that as it may, but being good doesn't always mean things will always be peachy. And as a matter of fact, the Parsha begins where Yaakov thought he's been through so much that there would be tranquility in his life. But it wasn't meant to be. He had gone through a lot, but it wasn't finished yet. So what happens is the Parsha begins by telling us the unique relationship that Yaakov had with Yosef. Yosef was special to him. Why? Well, Yosef was the firstborn from Rachel. Who was Rachel? His beloved wife, who had he married Rachel first, Yosef would have been the firstborn of the whole family. But because Lavan made the trick and made the switch and put Leah, so then the whole thing switched around, right? So he had a unique relationship with Yosef. They looked alike.
Downstairs in the front office, there's no electricity. Can I have the key to your closet?
Sure. Now I saw that there was lights out. We're in the ladies' room, but I can't get access to the fuse box here. I don't know why.
Okay, well, it could be, I'll see downstairs. If there's no electricity downstairs, it's because of the fuse box.
Yeah, but I can't open it, unfortunately. So technology, help! This is the key to the closet. Yeah. So they looked alike, and many things happened to them the same. Yaakov had problems with his brother Esau, and Yosef had problems with his brother. And we're going to find out that the brother Esau tried to kill Yaakov, and the brothers tried to kill Yosef as well. Both of their mothers were first barren. They had great qualities, and they both were destined for greatness. And Yaakov spent a lot of time teaching him Torah. We're actually going to find out that both of them ended up being buried in the land of Egypt as well. So there's a strong connection here between them.
It's an electrical issue. The whole closet is downstairs.
Okay.
So you don't have a key to that room?
I have a key. The lockbox somehow got locked, and I can't open it. I don't know why.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
The digital age is going to be the ruination of it.
Okay. All righty. In any event, so Yaakov gives him a beautiful garment, a colorful garment, and our sages say that we learn from this: don't give preferential treatment to one child over another, which make them all feel special, which, by the way, does not mean that they all have to be treated equally. There's a concept that we say, Chanoch lenar al pi darko, raise a child according to his way. Every child is different. I used to tell my kids when they were little, oh, it's not fair, she got that. I say, okay, put on a skirt, maybe you'll get one too. He got that, okay, put on pants, maybe you'll get that too. You know, like every kid's different. Children need different things, but each child needs to be made to feel special, so that. But when you're showing clear favoritism to one child over the other, and again, sometimes that's maybe a necessity. I was recently told a parent that the child is having a little bit of an issue. I said, make sure to take him out just by himself. Take him out maybe for, are you going out shopping or something? Take just him along, not his older brothers. He's like a middle child a little bit, and maybe a little extra attention would be a good thing for him. So you have to know how to apply this, but our sages are telling us you have to be careful, because in this particular case, it didn't work out well. So Yosef reported things to their father that he thought they were doing wrong. Why did he do that? His intentions were good because he wanted them to do better. So what's the problem with that? Question, anybody?
The question was.
The question was, what Yosef was reporting what his brothers did to his father, and they weren't
It was
happy.
Lashon,
I'm sorry?
it was Lashon Hara. It was Lashon Hara.
Lashon Hara, speaking
Right.
ill of others. Well, there is a prohibition of speaking ill about others, but in this particular case, there was a purpose in it. He just wasn't gossiping for the sake of gossiping. There is a prohibition of Lashon Hara, and I think Eleanor Roosevelt said it beautifully. Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people. All right? But Yosef wasn't a small mind, and he was doing it for a purpose, but what could he have done differently?
Well, he could have maybe
Something.
consulted with them first, with the
Correct.
brothers first. Before,
That's
yeah.
right. Because he accused them of several things which they were not guilty of. And had he discussed it with them directly first, then A, it may have helped if they were doing something wrong, they may have repented. And B, if they weren't, he would have gotten clarity. But instead, he skipped a stage, and that was a problem. And in fact, these are the three things he complained about. He said he thinks that they're eating animals without ritual slaughter. They were making fun of the children of Bilhah and Zilpah, the slaves, and they were hanging out with Canaanite women. So these things, but the problem was that he missed out, that he didn't understand exactly what was going on. And what ended up happening is he got punished measure for measure. He said they were eating animals without proper shechita, ritual slaughter. So his garment was put into the blood of a ritually slaughtered animal. He said that they were calling the children of Bilhah and Zilpah slaves. He was sold as a slave. And he said that they were not being appropriate with Canaanite women. So the wife of Potiphar ends up trying to seduce him. So there was a measure for measure here. Now I'm going to share with you another concept that Yosef should have done, and that is being done l'kaf schus, judging favorably, done l'kaf schus. Instead of assuming the worst, we should assume, especially in righteous people, we should assume the best in people. Even if we don't understand what they did, we should give them the benefit of the doubt. And judging people favorably is a very important idea, and unfortunately, Yosef did not do that.
There's a motto that if you don't have anything nice to say,
Don't say it, right? So I'm going to share with you a possible measure for measure that I came up with, which is sad, but I'm share it with you anyway. Many of you may know that in Israeli history, Prime Minister Rabin was assassinated by a Jewish man, which was a big, big deal, because Jew killing a Jew, not a common thing. And it became a whole hoo-ha. And I did a little history homework, and I came up with something, and and again, I want to be very clear, this does not justify what the fellow did. It was wrong. It's not his job to be executioner, judge, jury, and executioner. But historically, when Israel was being formed, there were two main groups, the Haganah and the Irgun. These are two groups that were fighting against the British to try to get them out of then Palestine, so that we could have a Jewish state. When the British finally left, there was jockeying for power between the Irgun and the Haganah. The head of the Ben Gurion, who became the first prime minister, was basically the head of the Haganah, and that's who he wanted to be in charge and become the Israeli army. And the Irgun, which was headed by Menachem Begin, who eventually, many, many years later, became prime minister as well, they didn't want to give in to the Haganah because they wanted to have a seat at the table as well. So there was a boat coming into Tel Aviv harbor, the Altalina, which was filled with arms and men of the Irgun. And the Haganah wanted them to surrender the guns and surrender their guns and become, that's it. You want to join the Haganah? Great. Not. And they didn't want to. So unfortunately, this is again after the War of Independence, after the British left, not the War of Independence, but after the British left, the Haganah decided to fire upon the Altalena boat. Jews were fighting with, and the one in charge was Rabbi. He was the one who was in charge of the unit that was firing at the Altalena. So to me, it is quite odd that the one who shot and led the shooting against their fellow Jews, he, many years later, ends up being killed by a Jew. Is this measure for measure? I do not know, but it might be. And again, it doesn't justify the killing of him by the fellow who killed him. But nevertheless, that is an interesting an interesting phenomenon. On a positive note, there was a fellow named I don't know his name, but he was a kind-hearted fellow who had a custom of when he came into a mourner's house, he would take his shoes off like the mourners in the house to show allegiance and feeling for the mourner who didn't wear shoes, because mourners don't wear leather shoes. So he would take off his shoes at the door and come in. And it was a very special thing. He tried to make the mourners feel, that's not our custom. The mourner people do come in to visit without taking off their shoes. But this was this man's custom. And what ended up happening was, many years, he used to do this all the time when he visited the mourner's home. Many years later, when he passed away, it was the day of Tisha B'Av. So all the people went to his funeral without wearing shoes. That was a positive measure for measure, which is interesting. Okay, so the brothers, though they were righteous, they disliked him. They didn't like that Yosef was seemingly very much above them and acting above them. And they didn't like it. However, they didn't make believe that they did like him. The Torah tells us that they were honest in their, they were upfront about it. The term that's used is a very beautiful one. They were not echad b'lei ve'echad b'peh. They were not one in the heart and different in the mouth. They were not happy, and they were clear about it, because a lot of times you have somebody you dislike, but you need him. So, how are you? Oh, I love you. Right? So that they did not do that. Yosef had a dream, and he had a dream that they were cutting sheaves in the field, and Yosef's sheave rose up into the sky, and all of their sheaves bowed down to his sheave. Now, the brothers were very upset, and they said, do you think you're going to rule over us? It's not how it works. But Yosef was trying to show it to them as being prophetic, that I have a destiny for greatness. But that's not how they looked at it, and they weren't happy. Then he had a second dream where the sun and the moon and the 11 stars bow down to Yosef. And again, they're not happy. And Yaakov himself says, how could this be true? Because who would the 11 stars be? The brothers. Who would the sun and the moon be? Mom and dad. So Yaakov said, how could it be true? Because his mom, Rachel, wasn't alive anymore. So how could this dream be true? So externally, Yaakov was sort of poo-pooing it, but internally in his head, Yaakov was saying that, you know what, there's some truth to this thing. This is too, and maybe the moon means Bilhah, the maidservant, Rachel's maidservant. I don't know. And their hatred grew because, again, it sounded like he was very, very, and what they were afraid of, that he was cutting them out. What do you mean cutting them out? Avrohom had how many children? Initially 2. He had Yishmael and Yitzchak, but Yishmael was not the one who got the legacy. It was Yitzchak who did. Yitzchak had how many children? 2. Yaakov and Esav. Esav was cut out. So the Shvatim, the tribes are thinking, you know what Yosef is doing? He's trying to become the heir apparent and cutting the rest of us out. Not a good thing from their perspective. So Yosef's brothers are pasturing the sheep. Yaakov sends Yosef to find out how they're doing. And he goes there, an angel tells him where they really are, and they see him coming, and they say, we have to kill him. We have to kill him. Because, excuse me, I wonder if it's about the class. Hello? Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm middle of a class now. I can't talk now. Please try me back a little later, okay? Around. Thank you very much. They see him coming and they decide that they're going to kill him. And Ruvain says, why should we kill him? Why should we have his blood on our hands? Let's throw him into a pit here. There were pits in the ground. We'll throw him there. And what was Reuben's calculation? Ruvain's plan was to come back later to save him. So Yosef comes and he pleads that they should leave him alone and they shouldn't hurt him, but they don't listen to his pleas, and they put him into the pit, and miraculously he's saved because the pit actually had snakes and scorpions in it, but they didn't see that. They just thought it was an empty pit and had no water, and they put him into the pit, and Reuven leaves to go to be with his father, and then while they're there, they see a caravan coming by, and Yehuda says, I have a better idea. Instead of leaving him in the pit where eventually he will die, let's take him out and we'll ship him, sell him as a slave, and he'll be shipped who knows where, and we'll get rid of him that way. And sure enough, they take off his garment, they put blood on it, and they sell him, and Reuven returns, and he says, Yosef, and he's gone. He's not in the pit anymore. He didn't know that what happened. He finds out later that they had in fact sold him. So they bring, and by the way, this is all part of God's plan to get the Jewish people to Egypt. So there's multi-level things going on here. There's what people are thinking and what God is thinking, and we're going to see that come up in the Parsha and in many ways as well. So they dip the garment into goat's blood, and they show it to Yaakov, and they ask him if he recognizes it, and he's devastated. Why? Because he thinks Yosef was killed by a wild animal. And Yaakov is devastated on not only an emotional father level, but on a spiritual level, because he knew that he needed to survive, he needed to be survived by the 12 tribes. And if he was not survived by the 12 tribes, that means he failed in his mission. And now Yosef is dead and he's inconsolable. He's inconsolable. And the Shvatim are a little bit, upset about this. They thought things would get better. Now, there's an interesting idea, the concept of forgetfulness. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Why both?
Sometimes you don't want to remember bad things.
Right? We don't remember bad things, and that there's a blessing in not remembering bad things. On a personal note, I had this, I lost my mother, a blessed memory, many years ago, and a few years afterwards, I had a dream that she was alive. And she said it was a mistake, I really didn't die. And then I woke up and I realized it was just a dream. And I remember feeling the searing pain that I had felt years before when she had passed. And look, I never forget about my mom, but that dream brought it back to me with such a powerful reality for the moment when I woke up to realize, oh no, it's just a dream. And it wasn't true. So forgetfulness is a good thing. And we don't really ever forget the loss of the loved ones, but the pain does recede to some degree, and we get different perspective on it. So Yaakov didn't have the benefit of forgetting Yosef. Why? Why didn't Yaakov have the benefit of forgetting Yosef?
Because he was still alive.
There you go, because he was still alive. That's correct. He didn't know that, but that was the story. And in the meantime, Yehuda is sort of rejected by the brothers a little bit because they see that he's not. They see that that his plan wasn't such a good one because they see that their father Yaakov is inconsolable. Yehuda's wife dies, so he's now single, and Yehuda's son married a beautiful woman, and the son didn't want her to lose in his mind, he didn't want her to lose her beauty. So he did a primitive form of birth control, which meant he aroused himself with his wife, but didn't complete he didn't consummate it fully so that she shouldn't get pregnant. And that's a no-no by Jewish law. And so he ends up dying young. So the second son is doing what's called the Levirate marriage and marries the same beautiful woman to take over for the brother that didn't have any children. And he does the same thing. And he doesn't finish the act of intimacy so that she shouldn't become pregnant. So he dies young. So now there's a third son, and this woman's name is Tamar. There's the third son. Now, Yehuda doesn't know why they're dying, but obviously he looks at Tamar as being the problem. Was it Tamar's fault? Definitely not. It was their fault, the choices they made. So he tells Tamar, don't call us, we'll call you about the third son. Basically, let's wait a while because he doesn't want to lose his third son. So Tamar eventually waits, but sees that it's not happening. So she eventually takes matters into her own hands, and she disguises herself and waits on the road as a woman of ill repute, thank you. And And entices Yehuda when he comes by to marry her, to have relations with him, which technically, by the way, the art school brings down halachically, marriage was different then. You had two consenting adults. That could be a marriage. It didn't have to be done exactly the way we do it today. But be that as it may, he has relationships with her and she becomes pregnant. Now, what happened was he didn't have the money to pay, so he gave her he gave her some of his items as a deposit, if you will. And then when he came back, he sent somebody to pay her. She was gone because she really was not a woman of the night. She just wanted to entice Yehuda. Now, our sages tell us something beautiful. Everyone is busy, but Hashem is planning Mashiach, planning to make to the seeds of the Messiah. Now, what ends up happening is when Yehuda finds out she's pregnant, now she technically is not supposed to be married to anybody except from Yehuda's family. Why? Because in a Levirate marriage, only the brothers or the family can marry this woman. And when she's pregnant, she needs to be killed because obviously she did something wrong. So Tamar does not want to embarrass Yehuda. So she sends the items that she had, that he had given her initially as a security deposit. She said, the father of the child is the owner of this. If you say who that is, fine. And if not, I will die. Now, this is an amazing thing that she's doing. She could have just said, Yehuda is the father. I have the DNA evidence and the items that belong to him. And that would have been a very big embarrassment for Yehuda. On the other hand, Yehuda is being tested now. What does he say? It'll be a public humiliation if he admits it. And it is a temptation to let it go. But Yehuda takes responsibility and he says, these items are mine and she is correct. She's righteous because I scorned her from allowing her to marry my son. So she set it up that I should be with her. And this way, she did what she needed to do. And there's a measure for measure, because when the items were shown to Yehuda, they said, do you recognize this? The same language that Yehuda said to Yaakov with the bloodied coat. Do you recognize this? Comes full circle. Again, Hashem is the celestial payback accountant. So it's the exact words they used. Hakerna, do you recognize this? There's a beautiful story about a rabbi and his wife who used to bring money to a poor person at his house. And they brought it secretly and they would leave. And one time he said, I have to find out who it is. So they saw that he was coming, so they ran away and he started chasing them. So they ran into an oven and hid in an oven. And those things are hot, the big oven, and it's hot, and his feet were burning, but her feet were not. So she told him, put your feet on my feet. And he did. And he said, how come your feet aren't burning and mine are? It says, because you give money for charity. When the poor come to the house, I give them food and I feed them directly. So I have a better merit than you do. But they were willing, and this is what the sages say, just like Tamar was willing to be burnt at the stake rather than embarrass Yehuda. And that's why, again, they jumped into the oven to spare the poor man the shame. Yosef is sent down to Egypt and sold into slavery there. And what ends up happening is he works for Potiphar, and God is very much with him. He is very successful. He's a slave, but he's very successful. And he's very handsome. And the wife of Potiphar is very, very interested in Yosef and tries to get his attention all the time. Our sages tell us that she changed outfits all the time. She was trying to entice him. And Yosef keeps on resisting her advances. Now, she saw something in the future that she would have descendants from Yosef. So she almost thought that this was like a mitzvah to do. But Yosef said no. And this is the concept of tests. Many of us are put into situations that are challenging. And we have to work on ourselves to try to pass the test, because that's an amazing thing. And Yosef was tempted, but resisted her advances all the time, and says it wouldn't be right to do. The Potiphar has given me in charge of the house and given me a lot of things, and I can't sin, even though no one will know about it, but God will know about it, and that isn't right. And actually, is it better to be tested and pass, or to avoid the test?
You better be tested and failed.
No, tested and passed. What do you think? What's better, to avoid the test or to be tested and pass?
Tested and passed.
No,
I think it's a
best
trick
is to avoid
question.
being tested. Because there's no guarantees. So that's important. Best to avoid situation. So what ends up happening is, now there is an opinion that Yosef was going to succumb to her, and had a vision of his father came to him. That related to the breastplate, that his stone would be removed from the breastplate. He wouldn't have it. There were 12 stones on the Kohen's breastplate, and his stone would be removed. And he strengthened himself. The fact that Yosef was tested, is that a negative for Yosef? It's real. It's life, right? But he resisted, and that's why Yosef ends up being called Yosef HaTzadik, because he was young and was not easy. And think about it, I try to think of it from a psychological, modern point of view. His brother sold him down the river. He didn't know where he was. He was in this foreign country by himself. Not easy. So what ends up happening is she grabs his garments and he runs out of the house. And she says, "Help, help." And everyone comes, and she says that Yosef tried to attack me, when in fact the opposite was true. So Yosef is ending up being thrown into jail. So now Yosef is really down the creek, right? Now he's not even as a slave, now he's imprisoned. And what ends up happening is that he goes to prison, and there too, and what's fascinating is that Yosef is still talking about God. He's always saying, "Thank God," and he's very grateful for the situation he's in spite of it being a very bad situation. And in the jail, he's helpful to the jailkeeper. And one day, the head waiter and the head baker are thrown into prison. And the head waiter for a fly in the wine of Pharaoh, and the head baker for a piece of stone in the bread. And they're thrown into prison. And Yosef helps them and befriends them as well. And one day, he comes into prison and he sees, and again, Yosef was still connected to God in spite of all of this. It's very important, very, very powerful, important lesson for us. He sees that they're sad. And that prompts him to ask them, is everything okay? And this is an important concept. You see somebody in a situation, don't ignore it. Find out, what's the story? How can I help? Maybe you can't, but maybe you could be a listening ear, or maybe you can. But sometimes we're so involved in our own things, we don't see other people. And we don't extend ourselves to them, which we should. So they tell him, we both had dreams, and we don't know what the dreams mean. So Yosef says, Hashem has many interpretations. Tell me, maybe I can interpret it. And the head waiter has a dream that there's 3 bunches of grapes are growing, and he's squeezing out it, pouring the wine into the cup, and he's putting it on Pharaoh's hand. And Yosef says, that dream means that in 3 days, you're going to be released from prison and you're going to get back to your job. Okay, great. The head baker says, I like that interpretation. Let me tell you my dream. There are 3 baskets on my head filled with baked goods, and the birds are eating from it, and that's it. And Yosef says, in 3 days, you're going to be hung. And in fact, 3 days later, that's what happens. But Yosef asks the head waiter twice, remember me. When you're freed, tell Pharaoh that I'm in jail unjustly, and let him know. So the Parsha ends with 3 days go by. It's Pharaoh's birthday, and he releases the head waiter, and he executes the head baker, but the head waiter doesn't do what he's supposed to do and doesn't recognize the good. He forgets all about Yosef, and Yosef is still stuck in prison. Head waiter's gone, got his job back. Head baker is gone, got his head, he was hung. And that's where the suspense ends, with the Parsha, with Yosef still languishing in prison. And the head waiter goes on with his life. All right. Questions, thoughts, comments, any ideas that you found interesting?
Was Reuben blessed at all? Save Joseph?
That's a great question. Was Reuven blessed at all? He is going to be blessed by his father, but in the end, but not yet, because what he did wasn't known yet to his father. But God did keep tabs, because he did try to do something very noble in trying to save Yosef. Any other thoughts, questions, ideas?
I have a question. I'm
Yes.
curious why the last Parsha ended with the family tree of Esav, and then it began with this Parsha with the beginning of Yaakov's.
We talked about it at the beginning, because we're searching for holiness, like it's the diamonds in the sand. When you get to the diamond, then you throw away the sand. So the Esav's children were the sand, and Yaakov and his descendants were the diamonds. Someone else had a question?
I was wondering if we have an indication as to the age difference.
I don't recall. I mean, he was not that much younger, because you have to understand, the tribes were all born basically when they was in Lavan's house, Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, and then he came later after Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zebulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher were all born. So he is from the younger set, if you will.
What finally happened to Tamar?
Well, she's married to Yehuda, that's it. And either way, and by the way, they will have descendants, and there's a deeper reason there that the seeds of Mashiach had to come about in a very, what appears to be unholy way, because to be able to lift up the world with all of its negativity, and also in a sense to hide from the evil inclination, to hide the holiness. It had to be done in such a subterfuge. Any other questions or thoughts? Anybody else? Light in the Parsha. Going once, going twice. Okay, so next Sunday there will not be class because, thank God, my grandson is getting married and we'll be back east. Thank you, Simchas by everybody. Thank you, and God willing, the following week we'll try to see if we can do two for the price of one. All right, we'll try to crash them both in. Have a one.
Last night.
I'm sorry.
Hanukkah thing is at 6 o'clock.
Tonight, Hanukkah class at 6 o'clock. Yes.
Thank you. Have a safe journey wherever you travel to. Safe journey home.
Thank you. Amen. When tonight? We're going to try it on Zoom too, but if not, I'll record it. You're welcome. Take care. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you. Welcome back. Been a long time.
It has. Listen, Rabbi, I left a message on your cell phone. If you could call me back sometime.
God willing. God
Thank
willing, we'll try to do that. All right. Take care. All the best. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, Chani. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Oh, Chani, are you still there? I missed it. Okay.